Manaus, Amazonas, May 11th, 2020. Morning began for Henry, Kimberly's uncle, with a gnawing sense of dread. The night before had not gone the way it should have. The evening prior, his niece warned him she'd be back late and asked him to keep the door unlocked. He did exactly that. But now, the apartment was untouched. Kimberly's things were in place, there was no sign of packing in her room, and nothing suggested she had left on her own. Kimberly's phone was unreachable. Several attempts to call failed. Then Henry reached out to Rafael Fernandez Rodriguez, her boyfriend, who was supposed to bring her home that evening. But Rafael didn't answer either. The simultaneous silence from both raised serious doubts, beyond an ordinary delay. The question crept in unbidden. What could have caused such a strange coincidence? To get to the bottom of things, Henry drove to the apartment complex where Rafael lived. He rang the doorbell. No answer. Inside, there were no footsteps, no sounds. It was eerily silent, empty. Turning to the authorities brought no relief. They told him both were adults and could have left on their own. They saw no grounds for an urgent investigation. But Henry knew his niece well. Kimberly had never vanished without a warning, and she always stayed in touch. Now 2 people were missing. A young woman supposed to return home, and the man who was meant to bring her back. The pressing question remained, what could have happened between them that night, when just a few hours earlier, they both seemed perfectly fine? Hey everyone. Before we dive into today's story, I just want to ask you to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment down below. I put a lot of effort into bringing you real, true crime cases from all around the world. Only authentic stories here. Your support really helps the channel grow, and I truly appreciate any interaction. Who was Kimberly, and what was she doing before her mysterious disappearance? Born in Manakimba, a small town in the state of Amazonas, Kimberly Karen Mota de Oliveira grew up with 2 younger brothers. As the only daughter, she was especially close with her mother, Naila, a woman who at one time had competed in beauty pageants herself. Between them, there was a rare bond. They spoke the same way, understood each other without words, and shared a common passion that became Kimberly's first serious interest. Her mother supported her every step of the way, from her first runway walks and photo shoots to pageants, where Kimberly learned to carry herself with confidence. By 2019, her dedication started to pay off. She earned the title of Miss Manakimba and went on to become a finalist in the regional Miss Amazonas competition. For someone from a small town, this was a major step forward. She was determined to make a name for herself in the industry, and her social media already looked like a polished professional portfolio. In my opinion, that level of discipline at just 20 years old was rare, an early marker of who she was. But modeling wasn't her only focus. Kimberly knew how unstable the fashion world could be, so she pursued a second path just as seriously: dentistry. That's what brought her to Manaus in the first place. She moved there to study and build a career far removed from the pageant spotlight. She lived with her uncle Henry, who supported her decisions and helped her adjust to the pace of city life. Balancing college, pageant prep, training, working on her appearance and skill set, Kimberly handled it all with ease and never once complained. Every part of her routine reflected a quiet determination, the kind that's shaped over years. Her work ethic, focus, and clear sense of direction gave her 2 promising futures to pursue. She never got the chance to follow either one. Kimberly's life took a sharp turn the moment Rafael Fernandez Rodriguez entered the picture. When they met, he was 31. A court analyst by profession, he had a steady job and was seen as a well-educated man. Years earlier, he had gone through a divorce and moved to Manaus in 2017, hoping for a fresh start. On the surface, Raphael seemed confident, career-driven, and mindful of his reputation. But often, that polished image can hide early signs of deeper issues, something that I believe played a critical role here. Later, it came to light that Raphael had known about Kimberly long before they ever met in person. He had been following her social media profile, watching her updates, and seeing her prep for competitions. But Kimberly had no idea. He never interacted publicly, just quietly kept track of her posts. They met by chance at a club in Manaus. Kimberly was out with friends when Raphael approached, offered her a drink, and tried to invite her to dance. She politely declined, not wanting to start anything in that kind of setting. But he didn't take the hint. The very next day, he started showing up in her digital life, liking old photos, sending direct messages, trying to start a conversation. Eventually, he found her number and began texting her through WhatsApp, pressing for a response. Bit by bit, the exchange grew, but all the initiative came from him. His interest was persistent, but not hostile, at least not in those early days. After a few in-person meetings, Raphael quickly suggested they take things further. By March 2020, they were officially a couple. But some of the details of how things developed still raise red flags for me. How deliberate was he in shaping that relationship? Was any of this behavior premeditated? One thing is clear. Raphael entered Kimberly's life quietly and confidently. So much so that no one around her initially saw any red flags. After they started dating in March 2020, everything seemed calm on the surface. But it didn't take long for the cracks to show. Raphael was not who he first appeared to be. Jealousy surfaced quickly and aggressively. He constantly checked Kimberly's phone, looked through her contacts, messages, even her photos. But it didn't stop there. He wanted her to cut off any communication with men, regardless of whether they were friends, classmates, or even distant relatives. The restrictions extended to social media. Raphael became increasingly critical of her photos, calling some of them too revealing, and insisted that she get his approval before posting anything online. He questioned her whereabouts constantly. Where are you? Who are you with? How long will it take you to get home? These questions became more frequent, more invasive. And this, to me, is something that really stands out. Behavior like this rarely fades on its own. In most cases, it only escalates. Whenever arguments happened, Raphael would try to smooth things over with grand gestures, fancy dinners, gifts, flowers. And for a moment, those gestures worked. But they didn't change the reality of his behavior. Kimberly started to recognize the pattern. Control would be followed by charm, and then it would all repeat again. She confided in close friends about how she was feeling. Kimberly admitted she was struggling. She said Raphael was becoming toxic, overly jealous, increasingly controlling, and she wasn't comfortable with the boundaries he was trying to impose. The relationship hadn't lasted long, but she'd never experienced that kind of pressure before. By mid-spring, Kimberly made the decision to end things. She didn't tell Raphael right away. Instead, she waited for the right moment, hoping to walk away without conflict. But that moment never came. On May 10th, 2020, Mother's Day, Kimberly started her morning with a heartfelt Instagram post. She shared a photo of her and her mom, Neela, and wrote a short message about how much she valued their bond, how deeply she missed her, and how hard it was to spend the holiday apart. There was nothing unusual about the post, no signs of distress, just an honest expression of longing for home. Kimberly often shared moments like that with her followers. Later that morning, she went out for a run. Her Uncle Henry joined her, along with a few of his friends, and Raphael. The jog took place in one of Manaus's public parks. Henry later said there was nothing in the couple's behavior that stood out. No arguments, no tension, no strange body language. From the outside, everything looked completely normal. And that's what makes this so important. It didn't match what was really going on behind the scenes. In my view, that disconnect between how things appear and how they truly are is often what lets dangerous signs go unnoticed. After coming back home from the morning run, Kimberly got ready to meet up with a friend. She told Henry she'd be home late and asked him to leave the door unlocked so she wouldn't wake him. For Henry, the request didn't raise any concern. This was completely normal for her. Balancing college, pageant prep, social events, and personal commitments often kept her out well past midnight. Around 10:30 p.m., Kimberly texted Henry again. She said she'd still be coming home later and that Raphael would be the one driving her back. Her tone was calm, with no hint of tension. Henry replied that he'd leave the door open and wished her a good night. That turned out to be the last known message sent from her phone. After that, all communication stopped. Neither Kimberly nor Raphael reached out to anyone again. At dawn on May 12, 2020, Manaus police forced entry into Raphael's apartment. This happened around 4:30 a.m. after Kimberly's family pushed for immediate access, since neither she nor Raphael had responded for an unusually long time. Officers entered through the front door, which had to be broken open. From the first moments inside, it became clear they were not looking for two people who were simply missing. In the bedroom, officers found Kimberly's body covered with a bedsheet. Beneath it, a large pool of blood had formed on the floor. Bloody footprints were visible nearby. On the balcony, they found a kitchen knife, its blade and handle stained with dried blood. Fingerprint analysis later showed that after Kimberly stopped replying to messages, only one person remained inside that apartment. The temperature in the apartment was unusually low. The air conditioner had been set to its coldest setting. This wasn't a random detail. Experts later confirmed that such a low temperature could slow early changes in the body after death. This suggested there had been an attempt to delay the physical deterioration of the remains and possibly postpone the moment of discovery. To me, actions like that rarely happen by impulse. They usually indicate at least some understanding of what happens to a body shortly after life ends. Once Kimberly's body was found, the earlier theory of a double disappearance, mentioned by police the day before, was immediately dismissed. It was now clear she had never left the apartment, and investigators shifted their focus to a criminal explanation. The case was formally reclassified as a crime, and Raphael was named the primary suspect. His absence from the apartment, the signs of escape, and his failure to contact family or authorities only strengthened the conclusion that he had left the scene intentionally. By around 6 a.m., officials publicly confirmed the discovery, and investigators launched a full operation to locate Raphael. One of the most crucial turning points in the investigation came with the analysis of the building surveillance footage. Security cameras at the residential complex captured the exact moment Kimberly and Raphael entered the building around 11 p.m. At first, they're seen walking calmly through the glass doors into the lobby. There's no rush, no visible signs of tension or distress. The elevator camera confirms the same: neutral expressions, no heated gestures, nothing to suggest an argument. The footage after that shows only an empty hallway. From that moment until 1:30 a.m., complete silence. Then, nearly 3 hours later, the elevator doors open again. This time, only Raphael steps out. His pace is steady, controlled. There's no panic, no urgency. He closes the building's front doors carefully, even double-checking the lock before walking out of frame. What caught investigators' attention was the timeline. The cameras never showed Kimberly leaving the building. Not once. There's no footage of her in the hallway, no exit from the lobby, no elevator trip down. The last confirmed moment of her presence is walking in with Raphael around 11 p.m., and his solo departure at 1:30 a.m. drew a clear line investigators couldn't ignore. I'd put it this way. When the footage shows someone going in, but never coming out, that becomes the cornerstone of any event reconstruction. After Kimberly's body was found, forensic experts were able to estimate a time of death based on tissue condition, body temperature, and how long she had been in a cooled environment. Those findings lined up with the window between when she entered the building and when Raphael walked out alone. It gave investigators a clear and consistent timeline. The version of events that took place inside Raphael's apartment only became known after his arrest. During questioning, investigators documented his account in detail. According to him, he and Kimberly came back to his apartment that evening and things seemed calm for a while. At one point, Kimberly went to take a shower, leaving her phone behind in the bedroom. That's when Raphael decided to check it. He opened her messages, looked through various apps, and came across conversations with other men. Messages he considered disrespectful. That, he claimed, is what triggered everything that followed. After reading the messages, Raphael said he walked to the kitchen, chose the largest knife, and hid it under his clothes. He didn't say how long this took, but it was clear that his decision wasn't made in a sudden burst of anger. It was calculated. When Kimberly came out of the shower and lay down on the bed, he confronted her about the messages. According to his statement, she denied having any other relationships. That's when the argument began. His statement did not go into emotional detail. He simply said that he used the knife, delivering wounds to Kimberly. The main injuries were to her neck and abdomen, and those wounds proved fatal. After Kimberly stopped showing signs of life, he said he tried to move her body to hide what had happened. But when he saw the blood spreading across the floor, he abandoned the attempt. He covered her with a bedsheet and left her on the bedroom floor. To reduce any odor and slow down the early physical changes that follow death, Raphael set the air conditioner to a very low temperature and walked out of the room. That detail later became an important part of the overall picture. It's worth noting that actions like these rarely happen without some level of calculated thinking. They look like the decisions of someone trying to control the aftermath. When he left the apartment, he took Kimberly's phone and threw it into a wooded area outside the city. This was apparently meant to make it harder for investigators to track her location or analyze her messages. However, his movements were later reconstructed through cameras and other tracking data. These admissions became the only direct account of what happened in the apartment during that time. There were no other witnesses. Investigators used his statements together with the physical evidence to build a timeline of the events. After committing the crime, Raphael left the apartment and contacted his father, Milton Rodriguez. During that call, he confessed to what he had done. According to the case files, his father strongly urged him to turn himself in immediately. That turned out to be the last thing Milton ever said to him. Shortly afterward, he passed away. There are two reported explanations. One source claims he ended his life on nearby railroad tracks, while another suggests a sudden health collapse triggered by a severe spike in blood pressure. The investigation never issued a definitive conclusion. While the family was facing that tragedy, Raphael headed toward the border. He got into his car and took the BR-174 highway. Cameras later captured him speeding, and eventually, footage showed his overturned vehicle near the Cacara area. According to police reports, he lost control on a curve, and the car landed on its side. Raphael managed to climb out of the wreck and had to continue his escape on foot. After the crash, he got a taxi, went to a bank, and withdrew an amount he believed would finance his getaway. Then, he continued his trip and reached Boa Vista, a city close to the Venezuelan border. There, he withdrew more money. His next step was clear. He intended to cross the border and disappear. But in May 2020, strict health checkpoints were in place due to the COVID-19 pandemic. At one of those checkpoints, officials attempted to register him, which prevented him from crossing. He was denied entry. After that failed attempt, Rafael walked into a forested area beyond the checkpoint and built a makeshift shelter, just a small structure using branches and whatever materials he could find. Then came a decision that later even surprised investigators. He hired local men to provide him with protection while he hid in the woods. The only logical takeaway here is this: Rafael wasn't planning a short escape. The fact that he arranged for protection, stocked up on cash, and set up a forest hideout suggests he was preparing to stay off the radar for a long time. After Kimberly's body was discovered, local residents gave police a tip. Someone had been spotted hiding out in the forest near the border. They pointed investigators toward a makeshift shelter deeper in the woods. Based on this lead, a special unit was dispatched to search the area. As officers approached the shelter, they were confronted by a group of 6 men. Armed with machetes, they blocked access and claimed they were guarding someone inside. A tense standoff followed. The men kept their distance but refused to let the officers through. Only after police explained that they were searching for a suspect in a serious crime did the resistance stop. The hired guards claimed they didn't know who they were protecting and insisted they were just doing a paid job. Deeper in the shelter, officers found Rafael. He didn't run, didn't resist, and was taken into custody without incident. He was led out of the woods and transported to a local precinct before being transferred back to Manaus. Footage from the arrest shows him calm, saying nothing, making no demands. At the station, Rafael gave his first official statement. He admitted to the crime, repeating the sequence of events and describing it as a burst of rage triggered by what he saw on Kimberly's phone. He claimed he hadn't planned anything in advance and acted out of overwhelming emotion. But investigators already had evidence that painted a different picture. His selection of the weapon, efforts to delay decomposition, and destruction of her phone all pointed to calculated decisions. This is where a major contradiction stands out. Rafael's claim of an emotional outburst doesn't line up with his methodical actions afterward. That gap between his story and the facts raised serious doubts about his honesty. Once his confession was recorded, the case was handed over to the prosecutor's office and preparations for trial officially began. The court process didn't start immediately. The pandemic led to multiple delays, and Rafael's attorneys requested a psychiatric evaluation, arguing he wasn't mentally fit to be held responsible. The assessment took several months, but experts declared him competent. 9 witnesses testified during the hearings. Among them was one of Rafael's former partners, who confirmed his history of jealousy and controlling behavior, well before he ever met Kimberly. Investigators laid out a detailed reconstruction of the crime: the timeline, surveillance footage, forensics from the apartment, and Rafael's own confession. In late October 2021, the court issued its verdict: 14 years in prison. For Kimberly's family, it was a devastating moment, but the day grew even heavier. Just hours after the verdict was announced, her mother, Neela, passed away after a long battle with cancer. The timing of her death, coinciding with the sentencing, added a heartbreaking layer to the already tragic case. The public reaction was nearly unanimous. Many called the sentence disproportionate and unjust. Social media flooded with comments criticizing the leniency of the law. And I think it's important to note, public outrage like this usually surfaces when there's a clear disconnect between the severity of a crime and the punishment handed down. Kimberly's funeral took place in her hometown of Manakimba. More than 200 people gathered for the service: family members, classmates, close friends, and residents of the town who knew her only from her appearances in local pageants. Her Uncle Henry walked beside the casket to the burial site, and the weight of his grief reflected the collective shock that had shaken everyone there. Meanwhile, Raphael's mother made a public statement claiming that her son had been blinded by love and didn't deserve to be judged harshly. Her words sparked a strong reaction. Kimberly's family saw it as an attempt to excuse what had happened. In 2023, Raphael's sentence was reduced by 8 months due to a clerical error in the court's calculation. That update triggered another wave of public outrage, and what stood out this time was that the frustration wasn't just emotional. People were pointing to a deeper, systemic problem: the overall leniency of sentencing in cases like this. For the Mota de Oliveira family, this wasn't just a tragedy, it was a double loss. They lost Kimberly, and just days later, her mother, who passed away without ever seeing justice fully served. And that double blow remains one of the most devastating outcomes of this entire case.